All right, so we are ready for the last session where we will be looking a bit into the internet governance ecosystem. We will start with the global IGF, discuss about IGF, IGFSA, EuroDig, European Commission and the multi-stakeholder model, and then we go to our region and have a couple of discussions there. We have few people joining us online. As you all know, SEEDIG has a broad network of supporting organizations. Sorry for the small technical issue. A broad network of supporting organizations. We have some of these supporting organizations joining us online now. We have Lynn Santamur from the Internet Governance Forum, chairing the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. We have Marcus Kumar from the IGF Support Association, and we have Valentina from the European Commission. They will be speaking with us online. Then we have Sandra Hoferichter from EuroDig, and then all of you in the room. So we start with Lynn Harris, can we? Lynn, can you hear us? Lynn? Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us. If you could tell us a few words about the preparatory process for this year's IGF and the role of national, regional IGF initiatives in the whole IGF process, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, I will have to repeat for Lynn because of our technical issues. Apologies to the room here. Lynn, I'm talking to you now. If you could tell us a few words about the preparations for the IGF 2018 and the overall role of IGF initiatives into the IGF process. Thank you.
Thank you. And I assume you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So first I'd like to thank everyone for their efforts to include us, those of us who are only able to participate remotely, and certainly to recognize the President of the National Assembly of the Republic of Slovenia and the Digitest Institute for their support of your fourth annual meeting. I'd like to talk a little bit about the global IGF first, and then I'll come to some of the specifics around 2018. So I actually call this entire set of IGF activities the IGF ecosystem, as the IGF has evolved over the last 13 years into so much more than just an annual global forum. It's progressed from that annual event to a virtually continuous set of activities. And the NRIs, of course, play a central and critical role in the IGF ecosystem. If we just come back a bit to where we sort of fit within the overall internet governance processes in the world, the IGF is squarely a part of the UN system, and at the same time squarely an open community process, which makes it somewhat unique in both these worlds. It's unique in the UN system in that it's convened by the UN Secretary General to be an open, multi-stakeholder forum, which brings together all stakeholders as equals in all aspects of its work. The IGF's UN mandate gives it the authority to serve as a neutral place for all stakeholders. And at the same time, the IGF's operations, its priorities, its program of activities are all determined by the global IGF community in an open, multi-stakeholder fashion. So I can take a minute and just tie those two roles together from a topic or content basis. The 12th IGF, which was held last December in Geneva, through an open community process across all of its intersessional activities, addressed a broad range of themes and issues. Cybersecurity and new technologies and emerging issues were two of the most popular themes. And by way of example, in terms of some of the activities there, the sessions on cybersecurity focused on capacity building, exploring more effective avenues for cooperation, and on preliminary steps for developing cybersecurity norms. New technologies and emerging issues drew together sessions related to artificial intelligence, big data, the Internet of Things, virtual reality, blockchain technologies, fake news. And those, of course, joined the returning topics such as access, digital transformation, sustainable development goals, youth and gender issues, and human rights online. At the same time, there's a lot of interest in the UN in what they call frontier technologies, that being artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, and big data, specifically recognizing the rapid pace of change and the significant implications inherent in them in international public policy, economic, and social spheres. So our interests are quite complementary. And this is good news, as the IGF ecosystem can very clearly happen. Our ecosystem and the global IGF community are working hard to help address these issues. Some of the resources available within the ecosystem are, of course, the IGF annual meeting itself, its intersessional activities such as major policy initiatives, best practice forums, dynamic coalitions, and, of course, the NRIs. NRIs such as SEEDIG are immensely important contributors to all these global debates. In addition to being a critical resource in policy and implementation efforts at national and regional levels, NRIs contribute significantly to the global work of the to the global work of the IGF, informing and inspiring all the work there. Broad participation enriches our collective knowledge, which enables better resolution of these complex, nuanced, and deeply intertwined issues. Working together enables solutions to be advanced at the international, regional, and national levels, with all stakeholders fully engaged. This is the uniqueness and the value of the IGF, and the uniqueness and value of the NRI initiatives. Participation from all stakeholders in all the activities across the IGF ecosystem is so important to ensure that these technologies and all advancements are advanced for the public good, and that all interests are addressed in doing so. Further, the work of the IGF and the NRIs continues to facilitate implementation of all the agreed WSIS action lines and provide support to the Sustainable Development Goals directly and through enabling a stronger, more inclusive global ICT environment. So coming briefly to 2018, based on requested improvements, the MAG is taking a new approach to shaping the program for this year's IGF. Our goal is to facilitate more concrete, focused, and cohesive discussions while avoiding duplicate sessions and reducing the number of parallel tracks. The MAG is focusing on the thematic approach and process changes that we believe will deliver more and stronger outputs. At the same time, it's clear we can all do more and do even more if we work together. So in 2018, the IGF will further its work in all its intersessional activities. The major policy initiative, Policy Options for Connecting and Enabling the Next Billions, is entering phase 4. There are 4 best practice forums this year. Cybersecurity, gender and access, and local content continue some of their work from previous years. And there's a new one on artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and big data. And of course, key to our joint success in all these activities is how we work together, especially with the NRIs. So much is being done to improve the IGF and increase its impact in terms of working modalities, producing outputs, increasing global outreach, increasing participation from developing countries specifically. This includes several MAG working groups, all of which are open to community participation and focused on producing a multi-year strategic work program and continuing the IGF's evolution through various improvement efforts. Current MAG efforts also prioritize increasing participation and engagement in internet governance discussions with all stakeholders, specifically private sector and government and policymakers, as well as stakeholders from developing countries. So I'm looking forward to the panel to learn how we might better support and better work with you and with all the NRIs. As I have said so many times in so many different forums, the NRIs are critically important and so central to advancing the kind of future we all want. Again, thank you for allowing me to participate, and particularly for allowing me to participate remotely. Thank you.
Thank you also, Lynn. I would just like to add one more note to what Lynn has just said about the importance of national and regional IGF into the global process. SEEDIG has been trying to contribute to the global IGF since its creation in 2015. I mean the creation of SEEDIG, of course. And for example, last year we were part of 2 NRI-led sessions at the Global IGF, one on an issue that Dusan has just spoken to you about, the IDNs, and the other one on cybersecurity, and Sonia was there. We exchanged experiences from our region with other regions from around the world. And we see value in these kind of exchanges, and we hope to contribute as the IGF continues, but for that we need you and we need your input. Thank you for this. Lynn, once again, thank you. We will be moving into discussions with the room a bit later after Marcus, Christina, and Sandra also give their remarks. Marcus, if you are ready, we will move to you. If you can tell us a few words about IGFSA, your support for SEEDIG, and also how you see the role of national and regional IGF in national and regional digital policy processes, please.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me. I'm not trying to hide, but I was unable to find the right button to turn on the camera as I had to shift to a tablet, and the setup is a bit different. The computer refused to give me sound. I'm happy to talk. I could actually say I'm very short because I agree with everything Lynn said, but let me say a few words about the IGFSA, and let me also put on my hat as co-facilitator of the Best Practice Forum on Cybersecurity. Let me start about the IGFSA. We were set up in 2014 as a non-profit association incorporated in Switzerland, and our objective is to promote and support the global IGF as well as the national and regional IGF initiatives. That says so in our bylaws. And we were very early on, we started giving modest contributions to NRIs, and including to the very first meeting of SEEDIG. I was very pleased to attend that inaugural meeting. And we also give funding to the UN. As you know, the IGF is funded through voluntary contribution, and IGFSA is pleased to be a recognized contributor to the UN Trust Fund. So far, we have contributed more than $250,000, and about roughly the same went to the NRIs. And there with NRIs, we focus on NRIs from developing countries and from emerging economies. And this has increased over the years, and obviously we also need more funding to keep pace with the rapidly growing network of NGIs. Of NRIs. In 2015 it was 23 NRIs, and last year it was already 41, so it's almost doubling in a very short time frame. This is good news, but at the same time challenging. And when we look back of how it all started, the NRI started very early on. There were sort of timid tentatives to have one in here and there, and within 5 years we had NRIs in all continents. And they picked up the main message from WSIS, which was that internet governance is more than just business of governments. Governments cannot do it alone. They do need the input of all stakeholders, private sector, technical community, civil society. That is, as we know, as the multi-stakeholder approach. And we have also recognized, yes, there is a global debate, and the global debate held in the IGF, in the annual meeting, is important. It's important for exchange of information, for sharing of good practices, for learning from each other, shaping global opinion and policies. But good internet governance begins at home, as I like to say. And here, of course, the NRIs play a crucial role. There has been a discussion whether the NRIs should be more conceived like a kind of PrepCom for the annual meeting. That was, some NRIs saw it that way to begin with, but I think more and more the view prevailed that NRIs look at what is important to them at their own level. Many policy decisions with real impact on the internet are taken at the national or regional level, where governments are the ultimate decision makers, but the NRIs provide a platform to give input into this process. And multi-stakeholder participation is not an end in itself, but it's a means towards an end. And the ultimate objective of multi-stakeholder policy dialogue on issues pertaining to the internet is a better internet, an internet that is global, open, interoperable, stable and secure. And we cannot take that for granted. It is a continuous struggle to keep it open, to keep it interoperable, and obviously to keep it also secure. And that brings me to the BPF on cyber security. We have started the process for this year, and we look at norms and values. We are not developing new norms and values, but we look at various initiatives that are underway. And we also saw potential danger, as most of these initiatives are driven from countries in Western Europe or the US, that those who are a little bit outside could be left behind, and we could create a new digital divide. And here the NRIs are important. They provide a platform to get input from developing countries, from economies in transition, what is important to you. And here I would like to invite you to get involved in this process. We're not asking you to work for us, but just to tell us what is important to you, where do you see challenges, and so that we can avoid a digital divide also in this area. And here, all in all, the contribution of NRIs towards a better internet is crucial. And you provide better and effective participative governance of a global resource, the internet. There, the NRIs play an important role in shaping decisions that have a real impact. And with this, I close my introductory remark, and I'm happy, of course, to participate in the discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you also, Markus. And on behalf of SEEDIG and I guess all national IGF initiatives from the region, we thank the IGFSA for your support. In the case of SEEDIG, we are able to bring fellows and students in our capacity development program, so thank you for that. Okay, we move to the European Commission now. European Commission is one of our supporting organizations, and we have with us Valentina Scialpi. Valentina, if you could hear us and if you could tell us a few words about the support of the European Commission for the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance, NRIs in general, and also maybe a few words about the attention that the Commission has been paying recently to digitalization in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Sorina. Can you hear me? I hope so. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm not hiding, I just don't have a camera at all. I feel very honored to take part in this event today, although only virtually, unfortunately. I would like to take this opportunity to greet also the other panelists, both online and offline, that are with me, Markus, Lynn, and Sandra. I will start by saying that SEEDIG is one of the most successful regional forums on internet governance, and is a remarkable place where we can explore the opportunities and challenges that the countries of the region face to harness and take advantage of digital technology and the digital transformation of our society. The Southeastern European region as a whole is taking important steps towards digitalization, thanks especially to its vibrant and creative community of innovators. The citizens of the Western Balkan and neighboring countries demand and deserve to be an active part and to benefit from the digital transformation that provides an opportunity to leapfrog to a state-of-the-art of modern digital society by using the experience of the European Union and transform Western Balkan countries. On digital skills as well as on digital policy in general, we need closer cooperation between all the European countries and in the region in general. Digital policies can work only through a strong link and cooperation across different regional and national initiatives. And this is why I strongly believe that the dialogue you had in the past 2 days is very important. Sharing experiences, successes, and failures, and explore how to best cooperate between countries at regional level and at the EU level and beyond. Because we absolutely cannot miss this opportunity. We need to take all the advantage that digitalization is bringing to us. Our future, in fact, is digital, and it is in all of our hands to make sure that citizens and business fully benefit of innovation, economic growth, and social development. And for this, I believe that policymakers, private sector, NGO, the tech industry, startups, citizens, we all have a role to play. SEEDIG, I believe, is the right place for such a dialogue because it brings the multi-stakeholder dimension that is at the heart of internet governance on the regional level. The European Commission, and some of you might know, has started a number of action and initiatives that relate to internet policy and topics that we discuss constantly in Internet Governance Forum, both at the global level but also at the regional and national level. Among those, almost 2 years ago, we started the Next Generation Internet Initiative with the ambition of shaping the digital policy of the next decade by building a human-centric internet that focuses on rebuilding trust in the technology and respects certain values that we, especially in Europe, consider fundamental. Aside from this initiative, the European Commission recently launched 2 high-level expert groups, one on fake news and the other one on artificial intelligence, and I'm proud to say that both these groups' composition reflects a multi-stakeholder approach. This highlights how important is for us the multi-stakeholder process and the bottom-up process that can influence the IGF and other regional and national initiatives in shaping the global debate over digital policies. We need the multi-stakeholder and cooperative approach to meet the challenges and opportunities of the digital transformation. And with this, I don't want to keep you too much, so thank you very much for this opportunity and the invitation.
Thank you, Valentina. We actually had an introductory panel yesterday talking about digitalization and digital policy in our region, and there were some discussions about how our region can sort of connect better to what happens at the European Union level, but also how to create a sort of a better synergy between those countries that are within the EU and those that are not. Also, because when we talk about SEEDIG, we talk about this broad notion of Southeastern Europe and the neighboring area, so it's a bit more than Western Balkans, but I think that's the beauty of SEEDIG. We're such a diversity of people and countries and cultures and everything else. Once again, thank you, Marcus, Lynn, and Valentina. If you could stay with us online, that would be great, because we will have some debates in the room. But before we move to the debates, Sandra from EuroDig, she will also tell us a few words about the preparations for EuroDig, the relations between EuroDig and SEEDIG, and probably a bit more.
Actually, that's wrong. I have prepared a speech. No, don't worry. I won't bore you with another speech. I know it's late and you had 2 days of intensive discussion. I would actually like to engage you a little bit in some ideas I had over the last, not only 2 days, but during the last weeks. I was also preparing the EuroDig. And SEEDIG is in its 4th year now, and personally I'm very proud that I could witness the moment of giving birth to SEEDIG in 2015, when we had Sofia as the host for EuroDig, and we combined it with the first Southeastern European Dialogue as a pre-event to Sofia, and it was a joint venture because we could use the same setup, and this was 4 years ago. So SEEDIG is 4 years now, but I mean, SEEDIG is part of a greater ecosystem. It's part of the IGF family, and the IGF family, including all the national and regional IGFs, is getting 13 this year. So what does this mean? 13, you become a teenager. And I would like to ask you, who of you has a teenager at home? 1, 2, 3, oh, quite a lot. So Dusan, you have always great ideas. What is the characteristics of a teenager? What is special about a teenager?
Facebook.
Okay.
It's uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable, that's good.
I have a two-boy feminist.
Okay, who else raised the hand having a teenager at home? Oh, come on, don't be shy now.
I have full of ideas.
Full of ideas, that's good. Come to you.
Inventive.
inventive. I must say you all have quite nice teenagers at home, because my daughter is 12, and what I hear from my friends, they have older kids. Teenagers can be very difficult sometimes. They have to find their identity, they have to build their personality. The moods can change from one moment to the other, from super sad to super happy, and sometimes you don't know the reason for this. And to be honest, I see the IGF movement at this stage a little bit like a teenager which is in a critical phase and which has to find its identity. And I think we should be all aware of that. Also, the IGF movement, with all the good benefits it has in theory, we are still not there, and we need really to ask ourselves, what kind of impact are we creating? We are still, to my perception, a rather small group of enthusiasts and experts. And when I look at other conferences like Republica in Germany, or the mobile internet mobile thing in Barcelona happening, or RightsCon, you have 10,000 attendees, and they are actually discussing the same issues as we are. So what kind of difference can we make? What kind of impact can we create? And this question is probably the most pressing question for the years to come, and where we have to prove if the multi-stakeholder model is really working. And at this stage, I like to quote a person I really very much admire. It is Marina Kaljurand, the former foreign minister of Estonia, and now she is the chair of the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace. And she says, and I think that's right to the point, and I would ask you to keep that always in mind, governments have a central role, but for the first time in history of mankind, they can't provide security. Here comes the private sector, academia, civil society, and technical community. And I think, Marina thinks, that's crucial that all these different communities are starting to talk to each other. Not only to talk, but to listen to each other and to cooperate with each other. And this actually brings it very much down to the point why the IGF was created for. And when there is a call for creating more output that the IGF should produce, we should recall what the purpose of the IGF was. And here I also quote from the IGF website. The purpose of the IGF is to maximize the opportunity for open and inclusive dialogue and exchange of ideas on internet governance related issues. Create opportunities to share best practices and experiences, identify emerging issues, and bring them to the attention of relevant bodies and the general public. Contribute to capacity building for internet governance. With this definition, it is clear the IGF mandate was not to negotiate outcomes. And I personally believe if we would try to negotiate outcomes, we would fail. Because then we have a totally different fora, which actually would be the enemy of open, equal-footed discussion. Because then everyone comes in the room, starts negotiating. And I think we should keep that in mind when we are demanding for more outcomes. However, the challenges in the cyberspace will remain, and we should really think how we can make this whole concept that we are a strong believer, and I guess everyone in the room as well, how we can make that more sustainable. And we should note here that most, if not all, regional and national forums, including SEEDIG, EuroDIG, and the global IGF, are not very well financed, and we have to ask ourselves how sustainable can we build this environment without decent financial resource or without decent resources. It's not only finance, it's also the time every stakeholder has to contribute. And with this kind of critical remarks at the end, I would like to give back to Serena. That is, I guess the plan is now to close the day, so I'm not going to do this. I think that is your day. No, I think you will engage for a discussion, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. So I kind of had a different plan, but listening to Sandra, I'm going to change my plan a bit for the rest of this session. So I have a question for everyone. Our online participants, Marcus, Lynn, Valentina, Sandra here, and you all in the room. Sandra said we are not there yet. We are still not there. I'm asking you, where do we want to be with IGFs, with the global IGF, with regional IGFs, with national IGFs? We have some in the room. What impact can we make? What impact do we want to make? And most importantly, can we measure this impact? And if so, how can we do that? I hope there are some hands in the room. Some of you, or those of you who are new to SEEDIG, don't know my bad tradition, but my bad tradition is to just go with the mic at people. So unless someone volunteers, I will do that. Sonia, you saved the room.
I think the goal of, well, okay, for more participation, Susanna Herring, Youth IGF coordinator and SEEDIG Exco. The general goal, I think it should be to open the online and offline discussions around IGFs more to the, this isn't the right word, I know, but I don't have a better word right now, more to the general public. And remove it from being, removing multi-stakeholderism of being just a word. And I think, well, a lot of people here has heard this before, but the global IGF is perhaps becoming too civil society oriented, and like slowly the private sector and some other actors seem to be stepping away or showing less interest. And I thought it was very interesting what Sandra said, that we have all these other conferences who are talking about the exact same things, and a lot of them are, and like we do this all for free, and they, to go to RightsCon, you need to spend thousands of dollars, and still they're packed and sold out. So I think the biggest issue the IG community has is like marketing, like really branding and marketing and being more attractive. The attractive is different for everyone, but I think that's a big issue. And also making it more accessible. But I'm not talking about technical access or remote access. I'm talking about the jargon, the language, because what we discuss here is actually impacting. It's related to everyone online, no matter what their background, but it feels, apparently it feels a bit foreign or too complex or excluding or complicated. And I think that's something we all need to think about and address. And about impact, I don't think this type of thing is measurable, because the founding of the IGF wasn't even only built on impact. It's not built on concrete results or outputs, and policies aren't also made in a day, and they can't easily be measured. Even if you churn out laws and regulations, a lot of the time you can't see what the effect is going to be, the long, the mid, the short-term effects. So I would just, my personal goal would be to open it up to more people, to make it more attractive, and then maybe later on down the way, looking back at the next 10 years, we can measure some type of impact.
Thank you, Sonia. We have 2 hands up in our online room. Marcus?
Sorry, yes, I had to find the unmute button first. No, thanks to Sandra for asking these questions and also being a little bit challenging. I think it's very healthy to look at an activity we all are engaged in with some critical eyes. And yes, her remarks are very pertinent. There has been lots of different initiatives. RightsCon has been mentioned, but the IGF remains, retains its specificity insofar as it is the only true multi-stakeholder forum where everybody participates as an equal. Yes, there is the perception that this may well be the reason why civil society likes the IGF, because it gives them a unique echo chamber, and why maybe governments are less comfortable. But I think a lot of that is also based on perception. Governments attend, they do listen, but the government representatives are usually not as free to speak, thinking aloud as an independent activist, a civil society activist, or a representative of academia or technical community is. But fact is, the IGF is not the only kid on the block anymore. And how to make the IGF more relevant, a lot of it has to do with funding or lack thereof, because all these things, better marketing, if you want to do it nicely, it costs, you need to have resources to do it. But nevertheless, I would not like to end on a pessimistic note. I think especially the NRIs, and there's a lot of discussion, what is multi-stakeholderism, is there one model or not, but the IGF is not an operational decision-making model. It's here for a platform for dialogue, as Sandra rightly and eloquently pointed out. And there the character is different. You cannot have an operational body being organized in the same open way where everybody has the same say. But for a forum for dialogue, it's different. And here, the NRIs, I would really not underestimate the impact you have had. And I agree, it's difficult to measure, and I have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but I was once on a panel in Sydney, sitting next to a guy from a Pacific island who said, thanks to the IGF, he learned how to set up an IXP, and now they have an IXP on that island. That is impact. Or Kenya, they have changed the constitution because they learned multi-stakeholder consultation works, and now they have a constitutional requirement that before passing any law, they need to consult the broader community in every aspect of lawmaking. So these are huge impacts. Also another, I was once in West Africa where the internet guys said, oh, this is actually the first time the minister talks to us, because it was a meeting, first West African IGF. It was held under sort of vague UN auspices. There was a link to the global IGF, which is convened by the Secretary General. That made it look important to the minister, and the minister turned up and actually listened and engaged in dialogue. And that happened in a country where before they never had any contact, any dialogue with the minister. So this is actually huge, and this is essentially effective participatory governance in countries where they did not know that. So, there's a reason to be proud and to be pleased, and obviously there's more to be done, but to spread the gospel that it leads to better decision making, and that it can be painful sometimes, as once there's a Kenyan, the highest civil servant, said, yes, I participate in multi-stakeholder processes. Yes, it's painful, but it helps us make the better decisions. And I think that is the very essence of this approach, which is a valid approach, and let's spread it and let's fight for it to make it more robust and more solid. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcus, for giving us some concrete examples of impacts of IGFs. We move back to the room and then we go back online. Vale?
I don't like to give back to anyone. Okay. Easier. So I think that, I don't like to end on a tragic note. I'm not a tragic person. I can be tragic comic. But I think that we need to be also very specific, and we cannot compare a UN kind of environment with anything like Republic or RightsCon. So let's say, if you are different kind of horse races, you have to make sure that you understand where you're running. I'm not particularly enthusiastic of UN because I spent the last 23 years of my life in the Balkans. So UN is not exactly the best, has not the best reputation ever in the Balkans. But I think that one thing is very important. It is the issue of dialogue and process. And I see, because we are running the Bosnian IGF 3 years in a row, that people that usually don't have a space for talking together, they talk to each other. Last year, we had the industry, the local industry. It's very challenging to be in local industry because we know the big names, of course, that will go globally because the big names don't need the national. And the national of 4 million compared to China, to Russia, to India. But we had. So I think that the format of the AGF provides a space that is safe in itself because it's not decision-making. It's dialogue. And my experience tells that we really need to have a place and a space where we can talk to each other. Because this per se, it's a big, big achievement. And having also, beyond the fragmentation, yesterday someone used balkanization. I'm very allergic to balkanization because it's used for fragmentation. For me, Balkan is diversity. Diversity is a plus. And I believe in Balkan. Diversity, yes, it's a place of blood, but life has blood. But it's a place of also being able to live. It is also the place among the SEEDIG that had been left outside by the EU. So if we look at the small and the big and the very complex political story and things that goes here, having a Southeast Europe, which is an invented region. The Southeastern Europe was created for funding, was former Yugoslavia plus Albania plus Moldova. Nothing to do. But now the SEEDIG is a place where people recognize itself. If someone is here from Ukraine, if someone is here from Russia, for me it's important. It means that there is a Europe that needs to talk. Yes, it's a 4-year-old Europe. But I think it's worth. And it's process-wise. In Rights Council, in Republica, you come. It's a show. It's a performance show. You go and you display yourself wonderfully. And you make networks. But this is not a place of displaying. It's not a performance. We can make performance. I do performance. But it's a place where you engage and you talk. Engage in 3 months, engaging from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. It's really a long-term commitment. It's about love. It's about the love of small things. So yes, every process can be better, but I think that we need also not to put expectation in the wrong place. This event or another event can finish tomorrow because it will last as long as the people find themselves in it. But I think it's important that we have different spaces, and it's a difficult space to have a government. Governments are very difficult to be here, and business industry is very difficult to bring. But I find that this tire from the national to the sub-regional to a regional, maybe not the global, it's a good exercise for people. So I'm not a fan, but I think that there are good things and that people are talking compared to the resource we have. But also there is an issue that we have to talk about money. Because whenever comes money, money was their return investment. So maybe the lack of money means that the conversation is less hijacked than in other place. Sorry for the long speech.
Thank you, Vale. I kindly invite you all in the room to think about intervening. But before that, I move online to Valentina.
Thank you, Serena. And actually, I wanted to say, Sandra, I like very much your metaphor with the teenager, which is, I really believe it's more or less where we are here, because a teenager normally asks him or herself, what do I want to be when I'm an adult? You know, what is my identity? And that's precisely, I think, where we stand. And it's true that there is a sort of, you can say there is a phenomenon of dispersion, because there are many other venue fora that are popping up, like the RightsCon was mentioned, but many, many others. And Lynn and many others know that we are trying to work actually in the MAG as well to make a bit the IGF more focused this year. And it's precisely there that I think both regional and national initiative have a role to play, because you give a venue that is a little bit more focused, more narrow, for geographical reasons, for people to discuss. I want to slightly take up on what Sandra also said about outcomes. I do agree that something that is, let's say, quote-unquote, regulation or legislation or enforcing sort of whatever dialogue we could have will change the nature completely of the IGF, and that's not what we want. But outcomes is very different from regulation. It's not necessarily the same thing. What we did already this year with the Geneva messages, it is something, and also all the examples that Marcus shared with us, and I'm very grateful for that, that are very important. You can say that the IGF has a lot of outcomes, has a lot of impact in raising awareness, capacity building, change management, change culture, etc., etc. But maybe we need to display and kind of advertise this more, I would say. And going back to, I think it was Sonia, if I'm not wrong, in the audience, yes, I do agree with you, although, you know, there was an example of policy and outcome or impact in 10 years, but I'm just afraid that with digital we do not have 10 years, because this innovation and this disruptive effect is simply too fast. So we need to be a bit, I wouldn't say faster than the technology, but a little bit, yeah, on the fast track. Thank you.
Thank you also, Valentina. And we also have Lynn, who will say a couple of words online. Lynn?
Thank you. Very, very interesting discussion. And I also appreciate Sandra opening it up and your flexibility with the program, Serena, and certainly all the comments that were made today, both from online and physical participants there. I mean, I'll keep my remarks short because I'd really like to hear more from the audience there, and maybe just work backward on a couple of points. I do agree with Valentina's comments on kind of the outcomes, and we try to talk about outputs and talk about kind of the quality of the outputs, the usefulness of the outputs, the accessibility of the outputs, which can cover anything, of course, from translation to succinctness. I think we have an awful lot of work we can do with the wealth of material that actually comes from the IGF and all the intersessional activities. So I think there's still a lot of additional value we can give to all the discussions that are taking place around the world with the process and the events we actually have in place today. At the same time, and this is partly, to encourage people to join up and sign up for some of the working groups that we have, the MAG does have a working group on multi-year strategic work program. And there was a drafting team effort, which is still underway. And we're just about to kick that working group off for the second year, which is actually trying to look at what steps we might be able to take to move closer to getting sort of a sense of the community, if I can use some generic words rather than policies or recommendations, or something that tries to get a thoughtful, broad reading of particular topics from the community. And there are certainly a lot more tools available today than there were even just a few years ago. So we're kind of experimenting, or we're reviewing some possible experiments we might take. And again, would encourage people to sign up for that working group or any of the others. Coming maybe a little bit more concretely to some of the impacts, one of the things we might do is think about, through all of our activities, if we can identify if there was a specific session from an IGF or a specific output from an intersessional activity or a specific discussion from an NRI that did make its way, and Marcus gave a couple of examples, but did make its way into policy discussions or other recommendations at a national or regional level. So the fact if we could start kind of capturing some of those, then I think that's some of the biggest proof points, and I think is most true to the model, which of course looks at internet public policy and recognizes the very clear and strong role nations and regions have in determining what's appropriate for themselves. And maybe just one last quick comment. I know we hear the comment about a lot of civil society, and obviously these forums are important to civil society. It's their opportunity to get in front of private sector and government. I often say that if you're a major company, you have no difficulty getting in front of a government leader, and vice versa. So, given we really support multi-stakeholder and all views and believe that betters our decisions, it's up to us to do everything we can to ensure that we continue to engage more people. And this shouldn't be at the expense of, trying to reduce one community's participation. Last year, in fact, we had over 100 different governments, countries registered at the IGF, which was the most ever, and also the most number of sessions organized by governments. And as Marcus said, there are some complexities which, of course, make it a little more difficult for governments sometimes to speak up or organize or participate in as visible a manner as other communities, but it doesn't mean that they're not there and participating. We also had more than 20 different internet governance organization, IGOs, participating as well. So we want to continue to build that up, and any ideas or suggestions. Same thing goes for building up private sector participation that anybody has. I'm very happy to hear them offline or in any of the meetings where I see people. So apologies if that was, I just tried to hit some extra points, so I wasn't duplicating some of the comments either from Sonia, Marcus, Valentina, and folks in the room. So thank you.
Thank you also, Lynn. Do we have other comments in the room? We have Tushan.
Yeah, thank you. So when Sandra asked the question, it struck my mind that our goal is obvious. We have a goal to survive for another 9 years. So we are determined to do this. So we also did some thinking. So if speaking about teenagers, they are determined. So you gave one example, but we found another one. So we are determined to improve the process, to build the community, to build the network of the partners. And if we speak about the impact that these processes have, then the question is, what is the impact? Is it the impact on the community or the impact on the environment, the policymakers, the partners? Of course, we do have, all IGF initiatives have an impact on the community, on their communities, on their stakeholders, on their partners. But of course, if we want to have impact also on the policy, on governments, then they have to come to the process. But it's not that we can achieve this by one-time events each year. So we have to improve something, and this is what actually SEEDIG did. SEEDIG extended the work to intersessional activities, and this, I think, is a crucial point. So we have these monthly summaries, we have monthly hubs, and we, I think, are going to consider also our other activities, which are also important to have this policy or wider impact. So I think that this is important for all IGF initiatives. So to move from this one-time event, not to, to intersessional activities, if they want to have more impacts, And SEEDIG created this year the strategy. And we did quite a lot of thinking as a group, and also we did discussion. We had a discussion with our community. And I think that we added these key points to the strategy, which can make SEEDIG having impact on the community and wider policy environment. And then there is capacity building. I think that we all learned here. It was for the second year now, our capacity building program, but we learned all, and I was here for the first time with this group, how important is this? And it really was a very good experience to have students, for example, discussing business perspective and user perspective, and they came to the same conclusion, to some ethical business models, which means that they truly understand the environment. And by, too long? No. By such processes, by such capacity development programs, we can make changes long term, and this is important. So it's not only this one-year event, but we have to extend this IGF thinking to capacity building programs and to some intersessional activities. But we have to find out which are the right intersessional activities so that we can grow the community and make impact. Yeah.
Thank you, Dusan. Before I try to wrap up this session, I'll just read one more comment from Lynn. At the IGF last year, governments and intergovernmental organizations made up 26% of participants. So that shows that there is a hope out there, even for SEEDIG. Thank you, everyone. I have one more comment. Andrea?
Thank you, Sorina. I just wanted to say a couple of things on this very useful reflection on what is the future of SEEDIG and then it evolved into the global IGF and EuroDig. You know, I was thinking that at the beginning, the IGF was like a bit the early punk music when everybody was still listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, you know. It was really the only place where you had discussion about the governance on the internet, the policy and the economy. And then what happened is that we kept playing punk rock music in a very small club, and in the meantime, the music continued to evolve, and it turned into mainstream pop rock, into metal, and you know, we didn't look at that. We kept with our 4 chords playing the same music among each other. And I think we have to realize the strength of our music, which the 4 chords probably is the multi-stakeholder model, but also we have to realize what we have been missing. I just out of curiosity, I've been to one of those mega conferences about internet and startups. I've been to the Web Summit, 60,000 people were there. I remember seeing not only big guys and big names of the industry, but seeing commissioners there, 3 commissioners there, heads of state were going there. Because the big interest, the big economy was there. In the IG community, we haven't been able to look at the evolution that the business was making on the internet. And we haven't been able, for our stubbornness sometimes to not look at outcomes, to say, no, this is an open discussion, things were evolving, and were just jumping on us. Now, if you have to also to make different analyses from the global to the regional to the local level. At the global level, there are some restrictions that in a way force you to keep playing punk music, which the UN were playing punk music, but they, you know, in a way you're kind of bounded. But at the regional, at the local level, you don't have these bonds. You actually can go forward. Take the core of your value, this multi-stakeholder openness, but try also to look what's going on around. So I was just listening, just looking at the RightsCon program, for instance, and they do this thing of policy hackathons. And I was like, why don't we do something like that? Why don't we are all policy wonkers and enthusiasts. Let's come up with, you know, some challenges and exercise and bring in the multi-stakeholder model, bring in government representative, the private sector there. Let's use this platform to do things like the Dusan you were pointing at, and I was thinking even this morning, to bring, in this case in the region, some trainings, some capacity, some knowledge that is not there and there is a big lack. This morning in cybersecurity we saw how this region has lack of coordination. Well, there is lack of coordination at the European level, but here it's even more. But the resources are there, and the platform is here. Let's use this platform. So I think we have to, and this is really the value of the SEEDIG and the regional and the national initiatives. That they are not forced into the global IGF. I know Marcus and Linda are there and they're listening to me and they're wondering whether I'm saying all the fair things, but from my experience, I've seen that it poses the limit. We don't have those limits. We do have limits in terms of resources, but you know, on that, I don't think this has to be the burden. I think sometimes we put the biggest burden in just replicating the same model, being among us, and you know, without realizing that the world is moving so fast, and it's almost a paradox because you know we are speaking about the internet. The internet changes every moment and every second, and we never embed this startup mindset of looking, okay, what else can we do? How can we take this model and making it really cool and sexy and effective? So I really look forward to the SEEDIG discussion in that and seeing how it can be in 10 years, but I don't think in 5 years has to be the same SEEDIG with the same people, with the same number of people, discussing the same thing, while, you know, we will have robots already having their own conferences with not millions of robots participating, and we're still there thinking, yes, but you know what, privacy is important, and, you know, I think we have to, I don't have a solution here, just some ideas. Haven't had the time yet to reflect, and I think it's a collective exercise. And like in music, you know, music comes and is nicer when you play with other people. So let's move on from the 4 punk rock chords into something more complex, but at the same time innovative. And that I thank you, and I close my expression.
Thank you, Andrea. Do we have other comments in the room? I don't think I can actually wrap up with some conclusions because I've heard a lot of questions, some good examples of why there is value in IGFs, why SEEDIG itself has value, but also many, many question marks. And as Andrea has said, yes, we need to continue building the community. Yes, we have stakeholders we need to reach out, but we also need to innovate. So we cannot keep doing the same things all over again. And that's where my, I guess, final kind request comes to you. SEEDIG is a community process. Everything we're doing is volunteer work, starting from the executive committee, continuing with the editorial team, our interns, our fellows, our youth, everyone is doing that. Because I guess as we do, you also believe that there is some value in all this, and we can make a difference, at least in this complicated but beautiful region of ours. Dusan, some messages for us?
So, organizers wanted me to prepare some messages. They made a mistake because I will use this opportunity to make some messages which are not so usual. So, first message, it was coming from Lynn. Preparation for global IGF meeting for 2018 is so comprehensive and covers all internet topic and issues which you can think of. If you have any topic which is not mentioned, please contact us. Multi-stakeholder model. Everybody connected to the internet are stakeholders. The real question is how big the stakes are. Answer, if you don't participate, you will never know. Usual greetings for SEEDIG was coming all over the place as most important and most successful sub-regional initiative. When you count Southeastern European region and, of course, exclude national initiatives. So, my favorite was European Commission have very active role in the field of internet. A lot of multi-stakeholder groups for major topics like fake news. Apparently, GDPR is not mentioned. SEEDIG was talking about IGF family and us as someone in teenage years. So my conclusion for this, after 13 years, we need to find ourselves as a teenager. Parents, whoever you are, you need to love, educate, and support your kids. We were talking also about the money. Money is the key for sustainability of IGF initiative. Well, it's like for anything in real life. And we have the lack of money to cover all wishes of a teenager, as usual. Then Serena was asking you, and there was a huge debate about where we want to go, what is the impact of IGF. I think that we can tell the message in 2 sentences. Don't ask teenager about that yet. Wait for him to grow, even if he is a musician. And last one, which complete the whole session is, and the session who knows what is the name of the session? Putting the puzzle together. Okay. You have to hire good Indian guide to understand IG ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dusan. So we wrapped up the session on a very, I would say, optimistic, positive, funny note. Thank you for that. Thank you, Lynn, Marcus, and Valentina for joining us online. Thank you, Sandra, for being at this session with us here and for raising those important questions. This session was not what it was planned to be, but it was very good. So thank you for that.